Welcome to the Hospitality Maverick podcast with me, Michael Tingsar. We at Hospitality Mavericks are here to inspire leaders to create hot-centered and profitable businesses from the inside out, the kind that both employees and customers love and support. Thanks to BizSimply for sponsoring this episode as our show partner. And BizSimply is the all-in-one HR, workforce management, road and operations software designed and built by hospitality experts to make every shift run like clockwork. And we join forces to help the industry to find new ways to become even more innovative in how we lead our people, how we operate, to how we grow our businesses, to how we serve our customers. Together we want to share strategies and tools that can make the industry thrive long term, not just survive.
You really can attract a new customer base that you might not have already had. And the idea that someone can't go to one of my Crosstown stores shouldn't limit me from me wanting to actually provide them with a Crosstown experience. That's the way I think about it now, is can Crosstown provide a hospitable service online as much as it does offline? And now I would say, yes, it can. You can get that experience. And I truly believe that a lot of hospitality businesses can offer that as well.
This is JP Then, who is the founder of Slerp and co-founder of Crosstown, an Omni-Channel brand established in 2014, specializing in handmade donuts, cookies and ice cream. And Slerp was born due to JP wanted to find another way of growing his high street food brand than just adding additional sites. And we sat down to talk about the power of omni-channel strategy and how you get it connected to your distribution channels so you can go from local to national. We also talked about how technology now can help you make better forecasting of your production so you ensure that you meet demand and minimize waste. JP gives his views on how digital the industry is, and when it comes to adoption compared to other industries, he explains the big challenges that we have in some ways is connected to we are very traditional in the industry and we're trying to retrofit digital into our businesses. Along the way, he shares his lives and leadership lessons in 2020, his entrepreneurial journey, the power of using data in business decisions, digital fear, and how to take care of yourself as a leader, and much more. Before you tune in, please sign up for our weekly newsletter on hospitalitymavericks.com, packed with more Maverick insights, strategies, and tools. But now, please grab coffee, maybe a donut, and notebook, and let's get started to get better understanding on how you scale your business through omni-channel strategy. I'm super excited about today's conversation because I still think we have a lot to learn on this journey. We've gone through the last 16 months, been talking about digital transformation, e-commerce, omni-channel, and now we probably all stand with some learnings on the other side of this, and we're trying now to find a way forward. So for today's conversation, I have an expert on the area, not just an expert in how you build e-commerce and omni-channels, but also how you actually do that in combination with operating a hospitality business. Because I got JP, who is the founder of Slerp and also involved in Crosstown as an operator with me here on the show. So I'm super excited to welcome you to the show, JP.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm looking forward to sharing, hopefully, a bit of a story on my background in both companies.
As I said a couple of times we've been talking pre to this conversation is that I get very excited when I find somebody to build technology that's also maybe have been or are an operator, and you are an operator at present, and actually had a problem as an operator pre-pandemic and started building your tech company. I think it was back in 2017 as I was preparing for this. Can you give like this? Also, on that note, I asked a lot of people, do you know about Slerp? Do you know about Crosstown? And actually, there was a lot of people that didn't know you existed and that you had, 13 location, and you actually, out of that, you learned something and built an e-commerce technology to help you solve one of your problems. How do you actually scale your business without opening units? So can you give us a bit like a top headlines overview about Slerp, maybe in combination with Crosstown is, and why you're here and what is the purpose of the business?
Sure. I think I'll start with Crosstown because it naturally leads into Slerp. Crosstown was founded in 2014, so it's 7 years old as a business now, and it's something that I co-founded with a guy called Adam. And very simply, Crosstown invented the sourdough donut. So we premiumized a category, and we started very humbly as a market stall on Leather Lane in Farringdon. And over the course of the last 7 years, have grown that business to be quite a successful omni-channel sweet treat brand that also now sells ice cream, cookies, and pairs it with specialty coffee. So, as you said before, Michael, we've got multiple sites across predominantly London and now Cambridge. There's 20 odd locations, which is a mix of permanent retail, market stalls, food trucks. There's also a little bit of wholesale through Whole Foods, Harrods, Planet Organic, and quite a healthy online business thanks to Slerp. And how that leads to Slerp? Well, quite simply, back in 2015, so quite early on in the Crosstown journey, one of the things that has really separated Crosstown, when I think back, is its progressive mindset. It's quite an innovative brand and has been very early adopters of a lot of technologies. So I remember when we were using iZettle on the market stall in Leather Lane, and we were the first market stall to sort of take card payment with no minimum. And we were one of the beta users for very early on. And the iZettle team used to come over from Scandinavia and pick my brain quite a lot because we were sort of pushing the platform and were a master user. We were also very early adopters of Deliveroo, the marketplace technology. And we were actually also launch partners with Uber Eats, so one of the first brands in the UK to use it. And when we started doing online ordering, I was very, very excited. I have to say, I really felt that online ordering would be a significant part of hospitality businesses going into the future. You've got to remember, this was back in 2014, 2015. So when I was crystal ball gazing, thinking what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years' time, I'm really looking at what's the lay of the land now. And, I truly believe that consumer habits would be shaped by these technologies, and that ultimately a strong proposition for a brand like Crosstown was to have multiple different revenue channels, and that included marketplaces, but also a direct-to-consumer online ordering. So back in 2015, having adopted Deliveroo and Uber Eats, I went on this search for a direct-to-consumer e-commerce solution, and quite quickly realized that a lot of what I would say traditional e-commerce providers, the Shopify, Squarespace of the world, they really weren't fit for purpose for hospitality, and they couldn't deal with the complexity of running a multi-premise or multi-site food business where you'd have a lot of different functionality compared to say, a retailer that's just distributing from a warehouse. We wanted to have different menus at every different location. We wanted to have on-demand orders as well as pre-orders, and we wanted to also, have the ability to ship nationwide. And we couldn't deal with that complexity of setup through traditional e-commerce providers. So, eventually, what happened was this idea just sat with me for a good sort of 6 to 9 months. And I eventually went, you know what, I really want this solution. I really think this is going to be something that's important. Let's build it out. So we ended up building out our MVP, or minimal viable product, using Crosstown as a guinea pig, as an example. And that happened all throughout 2016. And then in January 2017, we turned the e-commerce on and we started getting orders. And I remember that day very clearly because I was next to one of my developers, a guy called Victor, and he'd travel, he was sitting in my Shoreditch shop at Brick Lane, and he was coding away, and he's like, no, look, we've just launched it, it's live. And then 10 minutes later, there was an order from Victor. I was like, okay, he's doing a test order. It was actually another Victor. It was a real live order. I'll never forget that. I was like, this is the first order that's come in. who would have thought someone called Victor would order it? And since then, we haven't really looked back. It's been a crazy journey. And, we very quietly for 3 years was just testing and learning in the background with Crosstown. So from 2016 all the way through to 2019, we were just in the background doing our thing, really learning and educating ourselves about how to do e-commerce for hospitality. And then we eventually launched to market at the end of 2019, so not very long ago. And we launched, we started getting a bit of traction, and then the world sort of changed and tipped upside down as we know it. And luckily enough for us, Slerp was very well placed to help a lot of hospitality brands create a new revenue channel. And really, what happened was crazy to think about it. It was an acceleration of digital adoption that really just pushed forward what was already happening a number of years. When I thought of the idea back in 2015, 2016, I knew we were very early. We were too progressive in many senses. The market wasn't quite ready for it. I think it was prime in the end of 2019, but I mean, it really accelerated beyond my expectations when the pandemic hit, because hospitality brands needed to find revenue streams beyond their bricks and mortar premise, and we were well equipped to take on a lot of brands. So yeah, that's kind of the story in a nutshell of how the Slerp journey began. It was really about solving my own problem, to be honest. It was really about looking at my own business through Crosstown and going, hey, actually, I think this is something we really need. I can't find it in the market. Okay, let's go off and build it.
It's super interesting, as I mentioned in the introduction, that you came from an operator's kind of challenge point of view. What there's loads of platforms out there, and you mentioned Shopify, Deliveroo. There's lots of marketplaces, different platforms you can create revenue to. What is it that makes you guys unique on your platform? What is your principles behind it that makes it really work for you? Mentioned it works. There was nothing that really worked really well for hospitality at that point when you started out.
Yeah, I think there's a few angles on that. One of them was what we call order types. So Shopify is great at doing 3PL logistics. 3PL being your traditional DHL, FedEx, sort of Royal Mails. So if you order an item, you get it in 1 to 5 days' time usually. You've then got the other spectrum, which is the marketplaces like Deliveroo and Uber Eats, which are great at on-demand e-commerce, which is really about get me something instantaneously in the next sort of 30 to 60 minutes. But you haven't really got a platform that can do both. So how do you deal with the on-demand order types as well as what we call the pre-order order types, which is the advanced orders, as well as click and collect? So bringing that together was definitely something that I saw an opportunity with. And the second main reason was the ability to deal with the complexity of dealing with a multi-premise operation. Crosstown was growing and adding new doors, every few months at one point. When you have a portfolio of multiple sites and you need all those sites to have individual rules about, okay, I want this site to do on-demand orders, click and collect, and pre-orders, or I only want it to do click and collect. How do you deal with that complexity at a site level? And that's really where Slerp comes into its own. It really deals with the complexity of multi-premise operations with all the different order types. So we are a B2B business, right? Slerp is not consumer-facing. It's powering hospitality brands in the background, and we're not out there saying, "Hey, look, buy from Slerp." It's all about the brand, and that idea of essentially being this digital business partner to hospitality brands to help them sell more and manage better is broadly our goal and mission. How do we, become a tech enabler for hospitality businesses and give them the controls that they can scale. So it's with our technology powering it.
Why the name? Because you told me the story, but I think the audience should know as well. Because one of the things I was thinking when I first messaged you was sort of thinking, why Slurp? What is the idea behind that? Because I think language can be quite powerful sometimes when you know what's behind it. What is the story about naming it Slurp?
It's a very good question. It's not one that I've told many times, to be honest, but hopefully listeners will understand it, the method to my madness. What I just said was actually very, very relevant. This idea about being a digital business partner to help businesses sell more and manage better. I talked already about one of the big themes, which was e-commerce, creating an e-commerce platform that was relevant for hospitality. The second broad challenge learnings that I uncovered through growing Crosstown was just how archaic the back-end systems are that head office uses in the sector. We were struggling with what I thought was a very simple question at the time, but we're scrambling around every day to try and answer it. And it was based off this idea of how many donuts do we have to make tonight? Crosstown's a bakery that operates 365 days a year, makes the product fresh every day from its bakery in London. And we were struggling to pull together the numbers from all the different streams. So whether it's the store stock, the wholesale accounts earning purchase orders, online orders, we were just pulling all this together in Excel. Microsoft Excel, and it was the core tool we were using. And I had 2 full-time people at the time doing this, and I was about to add a third person. I was like, this doesn't seem right. Like, this seems really unscalable. So I started asking my peers, my friends in the sector and other people running restaurants and hospitality business, how do you deal with this? Like, how do you manage this simple sort of production scheduling, forecasting sort of a concept? And everyone was using Excel. It was just, without a doubt, the number one tool out there, which was, of course, very accepted because it's so powerful, but just not fit for purpose in many ways. So my idea actually was, well, if we can build this great e-commerce platform, and we can also build this great cloud-based, call it production schedule, order management system, that you could automatically pull in your online orders through Slerp. You could input your store orders for your own locations. You could upload the different purchase orders that come in through the wholesale accounts, and you can get an aggregated view of, okay, I need to produce 15,000 donuts tonight. Here's all the flavor breakdowns. Here are all the different components. And then also produce all the different packing slips and picking slips, so it can link up with the logistics side of the business. I thought I was onto a pretty big winning combination there. And as I thought about it more and more and researched it more and more, essentially what I realized was that I was building out a simplified ERP system for hospitality, but very much from a progressive mindset of e-com and order management. And that's actually where the name comes from. It stands for Simple Language ERP. And ERP systems, for those that don't know, it stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. And the big names that do that are Oracle and Salesforce. And very simply, they connect systems together and they make systems talk to each other, so you can make your operations slicker. So that's kind of the story. It's like, well, actually, I'm approaching this from an e-com and production scheduling point of view, and I actually think this is a baseline ERP system, but a very simple one. So I named the company Slerp and incorporated that company in 2016. And I think a lot of people think it's meant to be an acronym for slurping a drink, which is not. But if it sticks in people's minds one way or the other, that's the main thing. But it also remains our guiding light in many senses. This theme of sell more, manage better. You now know, right? Sell more is e-com, which is called Slerp Space, and manage better is called Slerp Composer, which is the order management. So they're the 2 core products that Slerp offers.
Yeah, and it's super interesting, JB, because lots of conversation I had with people. One thing was they switched on all this e-commerce and digital transformation especially during the pandemic. But suddenly they also had a complexity they had to deal with because there was coming orders in for a number of different channels, and you maybe didn't have the same production setup as you had before. There was so many moving parts, and they were still missing out orders or orders that was dropped, unhappy customers, and you had the answer there. And because I've been lucky to work with some ERP system in the past when I worked for McDonald's, I know the power of them when they really work, and the precision you can plan in, both from a food cost point of view but also from a labor cost point of view, when you know that, and when you know when your resources has to be there. I was thinking as you were explaining this, we take the industry as in general. We always, I always believe that we've been behind digitalization compared to many other industries, and I think there's a consensus now in the industry that we were actually further behind than we thought we were when the pandemic hit us. Both on the when you talk about creating a great employee experience, but also a customer experience. What is your view as both as an operator and tech business, and also where have we moved since the pandemic broke out?
It's interesting because I feel the hospitality business is it's something I'm very passionate about because it's full of creatives and innovators and craftspeople. It's probably a better word. They care about obviously the food that they put on the table, but the fit out and the experience and that whole. You walk into a premise, you're hit with something that feels special, but that doesn't necessarily mean they've been great at digital adoption and innovation and technology. I think you're right. They have been laggards as a sector because it's not always at the forefront of people's minds when they go to start a food business. I think that's a big reason, is that the types of creatives that are attracted to the sector may not be that digitally inclined, which is fair enough, right? They're more about flavored profiles and interesting eating experiences. So it's always been secondary, I think. I think you've kind of got this time in the market, which is really interesting, where you have these traditional hospitality businesses that are trying to reinvent themselves and really digitalize their operations and start to think about, okay, how do we add this digital layer, but we're retrofitting it into something that's quite traditional. And in a business that comes to mind is a Pret. I love Pret for so many reasons. It's a London institution and everyone has experienced it. But it is at that point now where it's like, okay, they are trying to retrofit something into their business. And it's, of course, very difficult. It's a huge business. It's very, very complex. On the flip side of that, you've got the nimble operators that are coming to the market now that have, ultimately none of the baggage that a lot of the traditional operators have. They're coming into it with quite a fresh pair of eyes, and they are already digitally focused. They know that they have to be more omni-channel. They have to rely on different revenue streams, and they almost have the benefit of looking at the last 18, 24 months and seeing that and going, okay, actually, yeah, when we think about this concept, we really have to think about the different pillars to how we to reach our customers. And that might not just be all in premise now. There could be an online component, there could be a marketplace component, there could be a dark kitchen component, there could be, meal kit component. There are literally so many ways that brand can extend now. So it's a really interesting time for the sector because I think there's a bit of a two-horse race where one's hasn't got the baggage and one's weighed down quite a lot. But I think it's at the forefront of a lot of businesses' minds.
Do you think that that as we go forward, digital initiatives will be part of normal business strategy for building a hospitality business?
I think as long as they're functional. I think there's still a lot of gimmicky type tech that comes out in every sector, right? This is not just limited to hospitality. It's really got to serve a purpose, and I think when you're thinking about growing a business, you're obviously so focused on turnover, revenue, making sure you're cash flow positive to pay the bills. So anything that can help you engage with your customer and sell is really important and should be at the forefront of people's minds. And that's why when you think about doing a fit out for a restaurant, right, the hygiene factor is you need a POS system and payment system. It's a must have. What's happening and what I think will happen is people will go, okay, you also need your direct online ordering channel. It's not an afterthought. It's actually something that's thought about at that initial concept phase of, okay, how do we launch a brand, but with that in mind from the get-go? And that might mean that it impacts your fit out, right? You have a layout that's different. You've got a section that, drivers can come collect from, or there's a different prep area for it. That's definitely something that I see more of now, which I think is really exciting. I think I also see more and more teams, head office teams, hiring for digital functions or delivery functions. That's definitely something we haven't seen before in the sector. When we work with lots of brands and groups, and so many of them are approaching this now with, okay, we need a specialist team to work hand in hand with the ops team, the finance function, and they focus solely on online ordering or digital or delivery, whatever you call it, so that there's an area of expertise in the business that can really push it forward.
It is very interesting. You're talking about that connection with that, starting from the outset to design the business, and I think we've seen, if you actually look closely at what McDonald's, Chipotle, now we're talking very big guys, did maybe 5 years, 8 years ago, they started actually, to build restaurant from that point and convert restaurants compared to how digital could be enabled in the best possible way, both for the employees and the customers. And that's, of course, I know they have extreme power, but they are, if you want to go see an example of somebody that's, in my view, have really, succeeded with it and very lucky just before a pandemic break out. Really, you can also see their numbers now if you go and see the yearly accounts and what they have been driven through these channels. I think that's a very good example, just to add on what you just said, of a successful business strategy around digitalization, both on the employee and customer journey in a way.
Yeah, look, there's been some businesses that have done actually quite well during the last 18 months because they've been digitally focused and they've been omni-channel. If I look at my own business at Crosstown, I actually feel like we're a better business than we ever have been. Despite the fact that we went through a period of significant turmoil and challenge and stress, and I won't lie. I thought in March last year my business was gone. We're an independent business. We're not institutionally backed, so we didn't have tons of money there sitting around waiting to deal with a pandemic, and we reacted in a positive way. But now I feel we're a strong business, and we learn a lot about ourselves. We've learned a lot about the resilience of the brand in itself, and a lot of the things that we were planning to do. We wanted to launch ice cream. We wanted to do nationwide delivery, but I always delayed it because the packaging was such a challenge. And I was like, that sits with me. I need to work that out. We wanted to do cookies. We wanted to do our first test sites at London. And we did all of that in the space of 9 months. And that was stuff that was sitting there that we had planned on the roadmap for the next 24, 36 months. So it really pushed us to go at it because we felt there was nothing to lose. And I think that mentality of going for it is something that I hope the sector doesn't lose in many senses. Crosstown, without a doubt, it's a stronger business than it ever has been, and I think it's got a really bright future ahead of it.
That's a great, success story in all this turmoil there still is in the sector. Actually, that you feel actually that you're been strengthened. Coming out strengthened out of this situation. If we take it a bit back to digitalization and as a sector, has there been and is there enough invested actually in your view in resources, time, money to actually drive this digital transformation we are talking about and that vision we want to get to as an industry?
I think we're still learning. I think it's still very, very early days. I think the sector is still grappling with, the uncertainty that's immediately in front of itself. We all know there's some significant challenges right in front of us. There's massive staffing shortages. We're still not out of lockdown. The date keeps changing. We're potentially got a third wave ahead of us. What all that means, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I do know, but what it does just remind myself as an operator is that we need to be nimble and agile. We need to remain that. We need to try and react positively, and we should be looking to push digital transformation, relevant digital transformation into businesses as fast as you can, even if it does feel like a scary prospect, because it really is where it's going or where it has gone. Really interesting bit of study that Slerp did very recently with Cam Media. We did a survey across the UK of people's buying habits to e-commerce, and the big finding in that was that 9 out of 10 people want their favorite brands to continue to buy online, or to sell online, post-pandemic, so post-lockdown. I mean, that's incredible, right? That number doesn't lie. 90% of people want that. So why would you not offer it? It's just a matter of now implementing it into your business to make it happen.
It's super interesting because I've also heard that, even though the consumer wants that, I've heard operators talking about they're just focusing on bringing people back into their premises, and they will then they have maybe had switched on e-commerce or different delivery channels, but they actually want to dumb them down as they go back. And it's so interesting that, again, if they're right or wrong, I don't know. But it's interesting when you put a stat like that in front of me, I would definitely, data never lies and science never lies. We've seen it now with the pandemic again, climate change. There's so many factors where we don't look at the data and actually make, emotional decisions. I call them gut decisions. God is good, but it has to be backed up by data, I often say. And you can see here again, there's an example that customers want something else and we're trying maybe to serve them something different. And it's such a great example of the opposite of what you just said. Do you think, JP, there's also an element of, I call it digital fear factor sometimes with operators, that what is this thing, digital transformation, what should I buy, what shouldn't I buy, how do I implement it? Oh, it didn't work last time, it's going to work this time. All these fears there's around technology and hospitality.
Yeah, I think so. I think because there's quite a few moving parts in something with like online ordering, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So there's to think that 100% of deliveries are going to be completely perfect is not the case, right? The reality is that there's a lot of steps needed to get that right. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of people that understand this space very well, and I'd like to think that myself is included in that. We should be leaning on each other to understand and learn what works, how to implement things, what didn't work as well. And what we do at Slerp, which I think is really important, is we take all those learnings from all the hundreds and hundreds of brands that are using Slerp to translate that and go, hey, this is something that worked really, really well. If you do the same, I think you're going to get similar results. And they're not rocket science, right? There really are things about being disciplined and treating the online channel with respect, I think is the big factor. Crosstown, you want to know what Crosstown does? It works to a marketing calendar. It has a calendar on the wall in the head office in the bakery. And guess what? Today, Wimbledon started. There's a Wimbledon campaign. 4th of July is next for Independence Day. We're doing something there. What's next? There was Father's Day. There was Mother's Day. There was Valentine's Day. There are so many key moments that you can attach yourself to as a brand to be authentic and provide that online offering that might be very different to what you have in premise. And that's another big factor, is that don't think about your in-premise offering as the same as your online. You can be completely different, and it can really open you up to all sorts of new things. Like, I remember when we started selling alcohol online at Crosstown, and we were like, oh, are people going to want this? Like, I don't know. Like, is a beer and donut gift box worthwhile? We partner with St. John as well for rosé and white wine. It's the best seller as a gift. it constantly outperforms everything, no matter what we do. It's just like, yeah, people want to pair donuts and alcohol. It's a thing. It's true, and the customers are telling us that. So who are we to question that? And now the online offering in the alcohol and donut segment and cookies and things is stronger than ever has been. So trying things and seeing if it sticks. That's part of the benefit of online as well, is that you've got a very controlled environment that is very easy to turn on and off in terms of changing your menu.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because, you can, in principle, introduce a new menu every week if that's you wanted to test them. But another thing we touched on a bit before, and also what I talked with operators and people in digital about during the pandemic, is that, also that we need to understand that when we switch on all these channels, we suddenly start to get data. We suddenly don't have to guess anymore. We actually have data to look at, sales data, whatever it is, interaction data. Where does it fall off? Which campaign, as you just talked about, makes people buy? What kind of gift boxes make people, as you said, I didn't know beer and donuts, but the sales number doesn't lie. So I know that I need to push that because that's a unique selling point I've just learned there. That's something the customers want. Is there also a bit that we sometimes stop, maybe because we are so busy at solving problems, not right now, of course, everybody's struggling. You need to put the fires out, but actually take the time, look at all the data you got in now, and actually start to say, what can we actually learn from this to actually get more silver bullets instead of firing cannonballs all the time when it comes to menu, marketing campaigns, and all that.
It's a very good point. I think because our sector has come from a foundation of marketplaces for online ordering, we're not used to having the data, right? We're not used to actually knowing who our customer is through those channels. So now that we do have that information, it goes to my point before, we are learning how to use it. We really are learning what is the right way to engage with them, and implementing CRM systems. Slerp integrates with a number of them so that you can pull that data across and actually start to run your marketing campaigns, whether it's email, whatever it is, and get that single customer view of, did they come in premise and did they buy online? Who are they? What do they like? But I don't think we're there as a sector to know how to really utilize it to its full potential. I think that will come. But I find it so interesting and exciting that we can have that. And you can really start to do targeted campaigns that are really interesting for that specific person, that are not just generic sort of send outs.
Yeah, and another thing is interesting, actually, because you have your way of doing business. Jim Collins, also from Good to Great, called it the flywheel effect, that that when you do these things, it works. And suddenly with data, you can start confirming that actually the way you build your business model, you talked a bit about, you build it around campaigns and special happenings. Besides opening the stalls or the shops every day, you have different happenings that's important for boost your revenue. And that's a flywheel effect, that you're actually knowing that comes in. And as you do it more and more, you get more and more efficient. And I think that's one of the things data can help you with. You can actually get a bit more consistency in your business, and actually knowing what you do will bring in revenue. You just have to do it consistently enough to do it, or else the consumer don't know you're doing it. Because sometimes people start something and they stop again because, the numbers didn't come. Well, you did it once. You didn't do it 100 times to get the learnings.
It comes back to that point about discipline and working to a schedule and having a dedicated team to look after this. And this is a significant revenue channel. It can be a really meaningful part of your business. The online business for Crosstown is it'd be in excess of 35%, 40%, if not more now. And of course, at one point it was 100%. So it's a channel that you really need to respect, and it also has such unlimited upside. Like, you really can attract a new customer base that you might not have already had. And the idea that someone can't go to one of my Crosstown stores shouldn't limit me from me wanting to actually provide them with a Crosstown experience. That's the way I think about it now, is can Crosstown provide a hospitable service online as much as it does offline? And now I would say yes, it can. You can get that experience, and I believe, I truly believe that a lot of hospitality businesses can offer that as well.
What are the three biggest trends you see in the coming years? Because we it seems like now we have switched on the technology in a way, and we have got revenue through. A lot of companies are trying even, more traditional high street location as Pred, you should say, trying to find out how they retrofit technology into their business and so on. But what are the big trends as an operator, tech provider, you can see right now that will happen?
I think there's a lot of moving parts with logistics still. I think it's a really important part of online ordering, and I could do a whole session on just logistics, to be honest. But I think the highlight of it is we are still not there as to truly exposing the real cost of a delivery to the end consumer. And I think that's something that will evolve considerably in the next 24, 36 months. I remember when the marketplace first started and delivery was like 99p or something, or free. And then it moved slightly up to 250. And I was just thinking to myself, I remember this a few years ago, going, there'll be a time when it's dynamic, where it will go up to a certain rate. It might be $4.99, whatever it is. And then move to that. There was a point when that happened. I think we've gone backward a bit again, where it's more sort of subsidized because there's a lot of competition between the big marketplaces. But ultimately, that's not the real cost. It doesn't cost you £2 to get a delivery. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that. You put it into perspective. If you buy something on a website and you get charged $3.99 or $4.99, and it's going to come in 3 to 5 days' time, that's what it costs. Why is it going to cost you £2 to get it in 30 minutes? That doesn't make any sense. So, definitely there's going to be some changes there, and the subsidies that occur in that will, I think, I hope it will ease up, because I think it's an important part that customers need to see the real cost of that stuff, and that will have an impact on where things go. That's kind of the biggest theme that I think is going to change. But other than that, I do feel that D2C e-commerce obviously is a huge wave in the sector, and almost it's the next wave beyond marketplaces. I really feel like these operators getting back some of the control and really having that hospitable service online as well as in premise is a theme, but it's not I wouldn't say it's something that will disappear. It's a long-term trend, and the adoption will continue. I think the other interesting part is the consolidation of the ecosystem, and what I mean by that is, if you think of your operations, you've got a motherboard, think of a computer, the motherboard. You've got a CPU, hard drive, you've got your RAM, you've got your cooler, your POS system, your online ordering, your marketplaces, your scheduler for staff. These things are going to converge. I think there's going to be some superpower players that come out of this that are offering a turnkey solution across the whole agenda. In many senses, Slerp is a component of that with its services. So it'll be interesting to see in the next 5 years what happens across Europe and the US and Asia to have these consolidated offerings that allow operators to go to one stop and go, here you go, I want this, and this. Oh, great, you give it to me all. I don't have to go to 20 providers to get everything and piece it together myself.
Yeah, and it comes back to the fear we talked about as well before, that the integration fear, that how do I do this? How do I get people to use it? The change management process as well. I agree with you. It's really interesting. The unanswered question, I also call it. In anything that happens in the world, there's always an unanswered question. I think you hit it there with logistic costs, because I had that conversation as well. If you just say, well, think about how many drops that person can do, and they need a living wage, it doesn't add up with maintenance of the fleet, the complexity of what you need in the back house to make that work. It just doesn't add up yet, and that's going to be very interesting to see that how that question is answered with logistics.
And there has to be a flexible model to it. So Crosstown uses a combination of its own full-time employed drivers, outsourced last mile drivers that do the on-demand jobs, as well as 3PL national shippers. So it's got a whole hybrid of different options through Slerp, and that works for us. And I think having that tailored approach is really important as to how you think about your business. It doesn't have to be all one way. It can be a combination of things.
Yeah, very, really good point there as well, JP, that, yeah, actually, and also it's not about what you need to look at your business, as you said, and find out what works for your business, and not just do what the neighbor does in a way, because you need to find out what's profitable for your neighbor might not be profitable for you as well, doing all operational sense or business sense for that sake. What if we talked a lot about digitalization, the product, e-commerce, and the journey. Is there anything you, as a CEO of two businesses, one you can say one with massive upsides because of pandemic, the other one thrown out in a bit of uncertainty, you got that back on track? What is there anything you have left behind you in the pandemic, like a mindset, a learning, an identity, to say, well, as a CEO, founder, entrepreneur, I leave that behind? It's always interesting to hear.
I think it goes. The first thing that comes to my mind is what I said before: the need to be nimble and agile. I think it's reasserted that to me, is that that's super important, that you maintain that in your business, or you try and make that a part of your culture. And when I talked about Crosstown at the start being progressive and innovative, it wasn't like we set that out as a policy. It's like, this is what we need to do. We just, our actions of how we adopted technology and how we thought about things and how we were willing to fail and trial things was really important to us establishing that brand. So I think that's really important, and how you can try and positively react to a situation. I know it's difficult, and I know it's a really, really tough time. There's no getting away from that. But I think it's a good opportunity to almost rip up the rule book and try something new, because there's nothing really to lose. You're already we're essentially at the bottom, right? This is about as hard as it's ever going to get. I hope so, touch wood. There's a good opportunity to try something different, and the path, you might have wanted to go from A to B, but you might have to go to C, D, E, F, and G to get there. But that's part of the journey of growing a business.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I also call this year the year of transformation in any way, because you just have to go with it. And sometimes you pull down ideas, you can't be certain what it means for you or your business and what you're going to be involved in, because there's so many big things that are out of our control. And it's just accepting that, but actually then, as you say, be ready and be nimble when it comes. Through your entrepreneurial career, setting up these two businesses, what is your biggest learning, and what have you learned from that?
It's a very difficult question. I think there's so many learnings. For me, I think I go back to the start of Crosstown, and what was really important was me finding a business partner. It was a big learning for me, that I was young, wanted to very bold, very confident, but ultimately I couldn't have achieved what I've achieved without Adam as my core business partner at Crosstown. And that's a massive learning, is if it's a long path, right? This is a long journey doing your own business. And if you can lean on someone and they can lean on you throughout all the twists and turns and ups and downs, it makes that journey a little bit easier. Plus, you're sharing it with someone. So call it whether it's a learning or just something that I have picked up on. I think finding someone to partner with is a really big one for me.
Yeah, and I think it's a very good one as well, especially in the times we've gone through. I haven't thought about it in that way, but in everything I've been involved, I always try to find a partner as well. And I think it's actually meant that we have kept things at float because there's always somebody to pick the other one up when needed. Because you're always in two different states of energy. So I think it's a really, really good one there. Which people on your journey, JP, has been the most influential to you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Adam from he's someone I've partnered with for years now and knows me better than anyone else, and has been really pivotal, and we lean on each other. And then my other partner, my girlfriend Rowena, uh, you know, to I feel sorry for her because she has to deal with me and my thick and thin, and me working all sorts of hours of the day. But she's been hugely a pillar for me as we've grown. So those two are definitely the two that I'd mention.
Yeah, great, JP. So hospitality, we talked about lots about digitalization, and there's some gaps we talk about, and you talked about there's new people coming in. But what do you think that the prospects and what's going to happen in hospitality? And I know it's a bit of a crystal ball moment. I'm giving you the crystal ball and actually asking you to predict maybe the next 12 to 18 months, and what are the big obstacles in your view?
Yeah, I think it's a good. As you can imagine, my response is about innovation. I think there's a really good opportunity to try things and innovate in your business. And you define what that is internally, right? You decide how much you want to push the boat out. I think there's a great opportunity for new businesses to find great sites. I think there's almost a bit of a reset with landlords happening where you can take shorter leases and try things out and share that risk. That hasn't been the case since I've started Crosstown in the last 7-8 years. It's always been very competitive. So that's a really big opportunity that I think will shape the high street. I think there's going to be some innovation around sharing spaces. I think people, a little bit like the food halls that have popped up, that's almost like the evolution of a food court, which has traditionally been not a great place to go in a big shopping center. But I think the food halls was one step. I feel shared space might be another step, and people are reaching out about doing things like that. So I think that might evolve as well. Other than that, I just hope the sector gets back on its feet and finds the confidence to grow again. I think, particularly in London, being a London-based business, I do hope the shortage in staff is something we overcome sooner rather than later. And I hope people feel that they want to work back in the sector, whether it's because they've gone because of Brexit or other reasons. I think it's a great industry to be a part of, and you can have a very successful and exciting career in hospitality, particularly with the innovation that's going through now with tech adoption and things.
Great, JP. What about yourself? It's been a crazy time, and
yeah, I might sleep for a couple of weeks.
So sleep is a very good one for the next question. I'm actually asking you is about how do you put yourself, because you're not just involved in one business, you're involved in two business, and how do you make sure that you are in the impact zone? And when I talk about the impact zone, it's like, how do you keep everything in balance? And Mr. Miyagi said to Karate Kid, balance is key. Daniel-san. So how do you actually do that? How do you keep yourself in balance?
It's a really good point. I think one of the hardest things I wrestle with myself is to try and take time out, and I'm still very much learning how to do that. And I always think of this quote by Oscar Wilde, which is, "To do nothing at all is the most difficult thing in the world, the most difficult and the most intellectual." And I can wholeheartedly agree with that. There's always this innate pressure as a founder and a CEO to always be, ringing the bell, achieving things, and doing X, Y, Z and pushing the boat out, but ultimately, it's a long path, and you have to take time out for yourself and the people around you. You don't always have to be comparing yourself to others as well. That's a big one. People are always constantly looking about who's opening what, or who's raising X money, or whatever that stuff. And that's definitely something I've learned to filter. I say filter the noise is one of my sayings that I have to myself.
Yeah, I normally say to people, turn off the news and focusing on what you're doing, and then you will find out if you need to know. And you don't need to mirror in their success, because that's not your success. You have a different journey. Yeah, so it's so interesting. So JP, we're coming to an end here. It's been an absolutely incredible conversation. As you say, there's much more to talk about in a way, and dive into. But what would you be your like 3 top advice to other leaders out there in the industry? What are your what should they be focusing on right now in this time of moment?
I think for hospitality business leaders, it might be daunting to think about quite significant digital adoption of technologies and creating this new sort of omni-channel business, but it's a leap you must take, and there's plenty of people that you can lean on to get advice and learnings. Businesses like Slerp, of course, that have just such a pool of information and resource and insight. Be bold and take that step. We're seeing so many businesses succeed and really look at their businesses differently, and that will really shape the next 1 to 5 years of your business if you really embrace that. I think it's also in the same breath, it's about saying to leaders who might have set up a restaurant or a hospitality concept and never thought about digital adoption. I know it's a deviation, but I think it's a really important one. And a story I always use is when I started Crosstown, I never had the word wholesale in my business plan. And it was a bells and whistles business plan. It was so in depth. I did everything about the brand. It was probably the best thing I've ever created, to be honest, that business plan. And after the first 12 months, after we started at Crosstown, the majority of the business was wholesale. And I think that's a really good, is learning from that. We adopted something that we didn't necessarily plan, and it worked out for the best for us. And now wholesale is like 2% of Crosstown's business, so it changed completely over the course of last few years. And but yeah, I think that's really important, is that it might not be in the original agenda to go into digital, but I think really ask yourself why not, if your customers are saying, hey, I want this.
Yeah, great advice there, JP. Thank you so much for that. If people want to reach out to you and learn more about Slerp and also Crosstown, what is the best places to do that?
Sure. So Slerp's website is very simple. It's slerp.com. Crosstown is crosstown.co.uk. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. Just look up JP Then, and there should only be one JP Then, I think, out there, and you'll see my face. And yeah, please reach out and drop me a line.
Great, JP. I am sending you and your teams the power and energy to come through the next phase of whatever we should call the next phase. I don't know yet, but there's a next phase, as you alert to as well, where we have to be nimble and agile. I'll send you all the energy power you need to do that.
I'll definitely absorb all of that and pass it on to the team as much as I can.
That was great, JP. Lots of inspiration in here and great ideas on how to build a strong omni-channel strategy. I would recommend you now to sit down with pen and paper and ask yourself, how can I optimize my omni-channel strategy? If you want to learn more about how to build e-commerce and omni-channel in your business, I would recommend you to tune in to episode number 110 with Christophe Delacroix, who is the co-founder of StoreKit, on mastering your omni-channel experience. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share, rate, review, or subscribe to one of our channels. A big thank you to BizSimply for supporting us, bringing great insights, strategies and tools to help the industry thrive, not just survive. Check them out at bizsimply.com or connect with them on their social at BizSimply or BizSimplyHQ. You can also email them directly on advice@bizsimply.com. A big thank you to Fina Charlton, who is the show producer and editor from the Podcast Collective. Tune in next time for another interview, and in the meantime, find out more about us and subscribe to our newsletter and download free leadership tools at hospitalitymavericks.com. And don't worry, if you didn't get all of this, there will be links in the show notes. Thank you and be Maverick.